Good Woch. This is the first part of the recordings that I gave yesterday on Parshas Setze about one of the particular lavim that there are in this week's Parsha, which is that we're not allowed to marry an Ammoni and a Moabi. And the reason why we're not allowed to marry them is because they did not come out to us with bread and water. And probably and very probably alluding to Avram Avinu's midah that he had, that he always used to go out, and when he saw the three people, and we'll come back to that very soon, that when the three Malachim came, the three people came, he went out to them and he offered them water and bread. And so they didn't do that, and they owe us, at least to the Jewish people, they're also Hebrews, they're also children of Lot. And so, because Avram saved Lot, the least that they can do is at least to welcome us in a nice way. And this shows that their midas are corrupt, and therefore there is the lois of lo yuvei b'kal Hashem. Chazal learn lo yuvei b'kal Hashem means not to marry. That's a clear lois. That's something that we can very much define and understand and measure. But lo yuvei b'kal Hashem is clearly also something which is more wider, otherwise it would have said. But it means, in other words, also not to give them high positions and things like that. As also, I think in Perek Gimel of Kedushin, and I think Halucha Yud Gimel in Yerushalmi, it seems to be alluding that they should also not have roles which are leadership roles in the Jewish people. So it's not only issue of chasnus, not only to have intercourse with them and to marry them, but it is also generically not to accept them into the Jewish leadership's positions in general. Now, what I would like to discuss here is that it's clear in my mind that there is a strong difference between Hachanasat Orchim and tzedakah. So, asher lo kidmu eschem belechem uvamayim, that they did not came forward to you with bread and with water. I'm not going to go into all the midrashim and Chazal without speaking about that, because I would like to really point out only on one particular point, which is the element of Hachanasat Orchim. Hachanasat Orchim is what we call in English hospitality, is in another gather completely, another framework completely versus tzedakah, charity. There is a fundamental difference between them, and this is what I would like to explain. A lot of people, they assume that Hachanasat Orchim is only when you find a person on the street or in shul and he doesn't have where to eat, and then you bring him into your home, and so you give him basically Hachanasat Orchim, and tzedakah is the same thing for them, because if you invite a friend that has by chance more money than you, has a fridge which is full of food and drinks, and he absolutely doesn't need you, he has a more comfortable house than you have, he has seats that are more comfortable, he has people that are helping him, and so basically he doesn't need. But as a friendship, you invite him to, it's a social interaction to build up and to continue on building up on your friendship. That is not Hachanasat Orchim. Well, I disagree, and I will explain you why I disagree. So there is a fundamental difference between chesed and tzedakah. This I already spoke a few times. Tzedakah is I give to you, from me to you, and as Rav Dessler explains, this is very good, because the more I give, the more I start to love the other person. If you want to love another person, the best thing to do is to give. Ahava is from the same shoylish in Aramaic also of giving. And therefore, it's when you give, you start to love, because then the psychology behind that can be that when you give from yourself to the other, part of yourself is in the other. And therefore, since you love yourself, since your person is selfish, therefore he is going to start liking the other person. Chesed is not that at all. Chesed is when I let the other inside of me, when I give the time for the other to think about him. So when I listen to another person, when I invite him into my house. And it's not I give him, but I let him come into me, into my property, into my brains, into my time, into everything that has to do with me, and I completely am becoming submissive to the other. In general, this idea of chesed is the cornerstone of what Judaism should be, because the very first posuk in the Torah is Bereshis Boreh Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz. Says Manitou, what does it have to teach us? What does it teach us? It's so most of the people, especially in the Haredi traditional Orthodox people, would say that this posuk teaches us that there is a Bashefer, there is a creator of the world. And he created the world, he created the Shamayim, and not that things existed before. There is no kadmus of the land, the world does not exist before. So basically, it's to say that there is a creator. But Manitou says, no, that's not the message of the very first posuk. The very first posuk of the Torah, which should be the cornerstone of everything that we believe in, is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu started off with a chesed act. The very first act is a chesed. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Ein Sof, he's infinite, he's everywhere. And in order for something to exist besides him, he has to make space. And he had to create that space, which is, some call it Tzimtzum. And in there could be material things and people and living things, etc. And this is the main definition of chesed, is to let other people exist, plus not only exist, but even to let other people exist in yourself. And this is what the part that Levinas would be adding on. So basically, the whole idea of Hachanasat Orchim is a level of the highest level of chesed, because it really literally lets the other person enter your property. It lets the other person enter into you. And we shall see that it's not only to let them be by us, but it is a changing of a role. I would like to introduce to you what Levinas is actually saying. What if you're going to search online on what are the teachings of Levinas, you will find a lot about the face, responsibility, asymmetrical responsibility. The face commands me, and this the other, and I am completely responsible for the other. What Levinas is saying basically is the following. Normally, and this is how I understand it, what I'm going to say now is not necessarily what you will find online, maybe here and there. I was, of course, influenced by some videos and by the way that people explain Levinas, because he himself in his books are very difficult to understand. So what Levinas is basically saying is that normally we assume, and this is the way I understand, we assume that we are bad people, that we are egoistic people, and we only want ourselves. But somehow we have either emotions of rachmanus, of pity, but mainly we have rational thinking that says at the end of the day, being selfish will not bring you forward very far, and also is not good for the society, and also is not good for your image, and eventually you will have a benefit from it. And so you rationalize the idea of chesed, that you have to do chesed and tzedakah. If you don't give chesed and tzedakah, if you don't help the poor, eventually the poor will revolt against you. If they are going to die from hunger, they will start stealing, and there will be violence in the world. So it's a good thing to help others, to support others, so that the world will exist, and your children, you and your children, the grandchildren, will have a normal, stable world. And so you rationalize the chesed that you have to do, because your first instinct is not to help. And then the second thought is to help. This is how we normally assume the world. And this is also how the philosophers look at it. They rationalize and they give the good reasons why a person has to be good and thinking of the others, and why order is good, etc. The problem with that is that if the whole idea of chesed is purely rational, then it happens to be that you can also rationalize horrible things. Hitler, when he wanted to kill all the Jews, it was for him a chesed that he wanted to do for the nation, for the world. Look, these people are parasites, they are untermenschen, they are corrupt, they are liars, everything, all the bad things that exist in humanity, were put upon the Jews. And so therefore, removing the Jews will help humanity to flourish. And for the moment, they are stuck. Humanity is stuck because of the Jews. They cannot develop their big dreams of the Third Reich. And the Jews are disturbing, and therefore you have to eliminate them. So he believed rationally that he was doing something ethical, something very good. So the moment that you rationalize ethics, you are opening the door to a lot of problems. So Levinas, basically what he says is that no, humans are ethics first, meaning the first reaction of a human when he sees another person is, I'm responsible for the other person. When I see a face of the other person, this face commands me, look after me, be responsible for me, independently of who I am. Completely strangers, I'm not done to you, we don't know each other, we have never seen each other, we will never see each other again. But my first reaction is, when I see another person, is I am looking after him. Of course, his also towards me. But in any case, the idea is that we have inherently, the first reaction that pops out in our brains is, I'm responsible for the other. He commands me to be responsible for him. In other words, I am becoming a servant of the other as becoming a master. You can see that basically when you see another person that is coming and you know that he wants something from you, and so you try to avoid his face. So you don't look, you look down, you make sure that you don't see him. Not only because you don't want him to see you or you want him to think that you didn't see him, but simply because it is for you very difficult. The moment that you look at his face and you see his face against you, this command comes onto you, and therefore you're not feeling comfortable, and because you are commanded to look after him and you don't want to. Why don't you want to? Because your rational thinking starts to think why I should not look after him. For example, if a person comes and he has to marry off his daughter and he doesn't have the money, and it's called Hachanasat Orchim, we have to help them. And so when this person comes and explains his case, your first reaction is, I have to pay for his whole wedding. I have to do something about that. That's the first reaction. The second reaction is, I can't do that. I don't have so much money. Or even if I have, but I have to think of myself, my future. I put this money away for my pension, for my wife, for the children. I have to marry off my own children, my Einikler. I have to help them. And so suddenly you rationalize why you are not going to help him. While your first reaction is, I need to help him. He commands me to help him and I need to be responsible for him. And the second thought is then afterwards I start to, as Micha says, there's an arbitrage. There is what Levinas calls a politics, that I need to weigh how much will I give to him and not to, because there are other people also commanding me to look after them. And myself also, am I commanding myself to look after myself? So myself is also one of the faces that I'm actually facing during these thoughts that I have. And so the rational thinking is why I should not help him the way that my first reaction is that to help him. So we are ethics first. First reaction is that we are completely responsible. We're going to do everything for the other person. And it is the rational that actually stops us from helping the other person. It's a completely different view. And if we would have developed this philosophy further, I believe then normally the Shoah would not be able to exist. It is only because we assume that the ethics have to be rationalized that therefore that we could come to very wrong conclusions. But if we would have started off continuously saying that we have to appreciate our very first, and that we have to help the stranger, the people that is not like us, the people that is infinitely different than us, that this is like we are, as I already explained, when I look after another person, it is as if I'm looking after Hashem, because the other person has a Tzelem Elokim. Then I think things would have turned out differently in the world. And I think this is what Levinas wants to teach us. And that's where it starts to become very interesting. Because when I give charity, I am the giver and he's the taker, as we explained. There is not a sense of responsibility as much as Levinas would have wanted it to be. We very quickly rationalize, I will give him 2 euros, I will give him 10 euros, 20 euros, 100 euros, or maybe for some that are very rich, they can give maybe 1,000 euros. But it remains an act of charity where I'm the giver and he's the taker. However, when you have a guest that comes into your house, even if these are rich and they are more, they don't need you actually. But the moment that they come into your house, what do? You welcome them. You ask them, can I take your coat? And then you hang up their coats. You ask them to sit down. They can choose, are these chairs good? Maybe they want another chair. Is it not comfortable? Are they sitting good? Are they hungry? Are they thirsty? Maybe they want first a drink, etc. So you are kind of very submissive to their needs. And it's, in other words, since you are continuously asking them and making sure and looking after them and checking if they are happy, if they didn't touch a meat, the chicken, for example, and you see that they didn't touch it, and you can, maybe you don't like chicken, maybe there is another meat, there is a brisket that you can have. We have also brisket. Why don't you check the brisket? And after the meal, you offer them maybe to bench, mezuman, that they can be the one that's going to bench. And then when they finish, you get up with them, and then you give them the coat, and you put the coat on, and then you go out to them, and you make what we call the levai. You go out with them to their home a bit. So basically, the whole idea is that you become a servant and there become the master. There is a change, a psychological change, which I cannot explain, but there is a psychological change that while before they came, you are the master of the house, and you may have some servants around you for some reason. But the moment that you have guests, the guest becomes the master of the house and you become their servants. You are completely responsible for all their needs. If they don't feel comfortable, whatever it is, you are trying to make sure that their needs are fulfilled while they are in your house. There is a switch in the roles. You are not anymore the masters, they become the masters. Where they're sitting is where the head of the table is becoming. And this is the idea of Hachanasat Orchim. Hachanasat Orchim, suddenly we become pure Levinasians. We become pure people that are behaving as Levinas things that we are in our cause. So in other words, when you have Hachanasat Orchim, for a few hours, a few minutes, a few hours, we are becoming the naked self. All our avatars, all our clothing, what covers us is being removed. And suddenly we are playing a role of becoming an evet to his Odoin, which is the purpose, and not only the purpose, but this is who we are as human beings. For a few minutes, we are pure human beings, and not anymore whatever covers us from really shining out who we are as a human being. And this is a very interesting concept, which I hope that you'll agree at some extent. It's true that some people are not very talented in Hachanasat Orchim, or that they do certain things in order not to embarrass the other person. They leave him alone. That can also happen, as somebody says. But in general, we always look, is he happy or not? If he's not happy, then it makes us very unhappy, and therefore we'll try to correct the situation. And this is exactly what happened to Avraham Avinu. In Avraham Avinu, in Parshas Vayero, there is something extremely interesting. As the Rebbeinu Shalom, God presents himself to him. Already Hashem presents himself to him. So Hashem comes and he says, here I am. And Avraham wants to stand up. Hashem says, no, you don't have to stand up. It's okay. You can sit. And then we don't know what Hashem is standing. And then suddenly Avraham sees of the side of his eye, three people are nitzovim. Nitzovim is there, encounter him. And he saw that. And he runs to them. And he bows down to them as if they are important people. So here we see what Levinas is calling the face, the encounter of the face-to-face, when I encountering the other face, which is exactly the Loshen Nitzovim Olov, they are encountering, he sees their face, the face is commanding them, he runs to them, and he completely is submissive to them. They're commanding him. And then he says, Adonai means my master. Please, if I hope that I find some gratification in your eyes, don't go away from your servant. Avdecho is a servant. Here, Avraham Avinu suddenly, in front of three strangers that have not done anything to him, he has not seen them before, and he will probably not see them afterwards, completely becomes submissive to those three people, and he calls himself Avdecho, your servant. Take a bit of water, wash your feet, and you should rest under the tree. And Rashi says Tachasoetz is Tachasoilon. And so the question is, why is Tachasoilon? What does Rashi wants to teach us? This is, every child knows Tachasoetz means Tachasoilon. Ilon means a tree. So I heard from Rav Sherki that it is to prove the opposite of Christianity. The Christians, they believe that these psukim are referring to the three kings that came to Maria to tell her that she will have a child, similar to Avrom. So it's kind of a nevuah that will happen. And Vayish'anu Tachasoetz means the cross, the wooden cross. But so Rashi says, no, it's not a cross. Eitz means the tree. So again, he repeats himself that I am your servant. And then they said, like this you should do like you were speaking. And that's something very interesting, because they say, you should do like that. That's a tzivui, that's an obligation, it's a commandment. You should do as you said. And this actually represents, these few psukim represents what is the essence of the human beings. The human beings have to feel as if they are an eved, a servant to the stranger that is facing them. And that it is the servant that is the contrary, the other person commands him. Kein taseh, you should do like that. Taseh is an obligation, is a commandment that he should. It's not very nice to say that. If I would be a guest and somebody would offer me, the host would offer me, I would say, oh, if you please, of course. I would never say to him, yes, you have to do what you just said. I want you to do what you just said. No, but they do. It means, why does it say like that? It's actually representing, here in these few psukim, is representing the whole idea of what Levinas is saying. That whenever we meet somebody else, we are feeling obliged, we are feeling the first feeling, and this is what Avraham never masked this feeling, the masks that mask us from not showing that feelings, the rational that we do afterwards, but the first feeling Avraham let it out. And this is what he was showing there. And this is what the psukim are teaching us. The other commands us, and I become a servant to the other as quickly as the moment that he faces me. And this is something very, very interesting and to see. So in other words, Avraham teaches us, the story of Avraham is teaching us how we have to behave. But what is more interesting, and this is maybe even more shocking, is, as it seems from the psukim here, is that while you are standing in front of Hashem, Hashem comes down, wants to teach you something, wants to tell you something, ask you something, whatever it is. So you're standing in front of Hashem, and suddenly you see another person, other people commanding you. You have to be responsible for them. And you make as if a sign to Hashem, wait a minute, I'm going to deal with other people. And then for a few hours, you're busy with other people, and then you come back, and then you say, Vayifnu mishom hanoshim, they went away, and And then it continues with the very first posuk, Vayero Elov Hashem. So then Avram comes back, okay, now Hashem, I have time for you. What do you want? It says, and Rashi says that Etzem, you should say, the posuk has been kind of changed, and I'm not going to go into that a lot, but it should say, Hashem oidenu oimet lifnei Avram, that Hashem was still waiting for him. But it's not nice to say Hashem waits for Avram, so the Torah changed that. And it said Avram is still standing in front of Hashem, and not that Hashem is still standing in front of Avram. And by my Chumash, it's written, Asher Hu Zal Lichtov Kein, that the Soifrim, the Tikkun Soifrim, as Rashi explains here, were really human beings, that there were Soifrim that actually changed the words. Originally, it was written, Hashem oidenu oimet lifnei Avram. What they did is they just exchanged because it's not nice to say that Hashem is still standing there. It's not bekovedik for Hashem, not bekovedik for Avram to let Hashem wait so long. And so therefore they changed it. Avram oidenu oimet lifnei Hashem. Which is very controversial, by the way. That's why by me, in my Chumash, it's written between brackets. And we already discussed by Moshe Feinstein not liking this, the way that people read the Medrash about this Tikkun Soifrim. The Medrash said that there are multiple places where the Soifrim have changed the words of the Torah. Possibly we're referring to the Soifrim like Ezra Sofer, we don't know. But Moshe Feinstein said you can't say that, especially since it's one of the Yudim of the Rambam, that the Torah that we have today is the same Torah that was given from Moshe Sinai. And so to say that somebody changed is not possible. But in any case, this is what I have in my siddur here, and this is also indeed the parts that is mentioned in the Medrash, as Rashi already explained. But in any case, what you see here is that when you're standing in front of Hashem, even when you are busy with your highest level of verticality, when you feel that you are standing in front of God and God is listening to you, it comes down to you, whatever it is, even when you are in this specific highest moment of verticality, whenever there is a horizontality that comes across you, you have to leave verticality and go to horizontality. Because as I explained you, and also Levinas and the Ramak, that the whole verticality is only in order to know how to do your horizontality. In other words, the purpose of us as humans is to look after the other and not to be connected to God. The only reason why you have to be connected to God is to know Him better, so that, as the Rambam in Emanuel says in the last perek, because the moment I know who Hashem is, I know how He behaves and I know how I can copy Him, and therefore I can know how I have to look after the other as He's looking after the humans. And that's a very interesting concept that you see here. And my question was, which I've heard some answers during the shiur, but I wanted just to leave it here in this video. My question is, if that's true, then why, when we daven the Shmoneh Esrei, or when we are mekabel Pnei Hashchina with the Kabbalah Malchus Shomayim with the Kriyas Shema, if a person comes and wants to talk to us, needs to talk to us, needs to tell us something, we are not allowed to answer. If Avraham Avinu was standing in front of Hashem and he was busy and with other people suddenly in the middle, and then he came back to Hashem, why aren't we allowed to, why aren't we obligated when we daven Shmoneh Esrei and we see a person needs us, that we should just stop Shmoneh Esrei, go to the needs, come back and continue the Shmoneh Esrei, as the story says here in the Torah. And so this was the question that I left. There is a lot of answers. One of the answers could be that Shmoneh Esrei is where I am calling Hashem, and it's a Dobra Kovua, while here it is Hashem that came down, and it came down as an ad hoc, as a spontaneous. And so therefore, as it is spontaneous and it's not Kovua, maybe there is less obligation to be connected and to follow. But I don't know. I think the answers, there's multiple answers that were given, which I all liked actually. But I'm actually maybe to the listener, or maybe later on we will have answers and that I will mention in a future video. But this is what I wanted to share with you. There is one point which I did not mention in the shiur of yesterday, and I think it is my son Yechiel that once pointed it out, that the very first Mishnah in Shabbos is about the Oni and the Oni and the Balabai, so the Oni and the Oshir, And on Shabbos, if you're allowed to give him something, and nakir and anocha, if you take out and you put it inside his hands, then you made an akira and you made an anocha. If he stands outside with his hand, that it is a good anocha, and therefore he's chayav. And opposite, if the oni takes out something and brings it out in Sharabim, then he's chayav. And then there are cases where one of them made akira, the other made the anocha, or there is no anocha at all. Then therefore there's Peturim, Shnei Peturim, or whatever. So these are it's very interesting that there's examples. It starts off on Shabbos with an examples of an Oni and a Balabais and an Oshir. I think personally, and that and this is based on the input that I received from Yechiel, my son Yechiel, is that the idea here is that on Shabbos, the Torah does not want you to do the tzedakah, but he wants you to invite him in. So if you can't give him to the Oni, then you know what, why don't you stop about trying, just invite him in. The Oni stands outside on Shabbos. What you do is you say, come inside. Shabbos is a moment of Hachanasat Orchim. Shabbos is a moment to invite people to your homes and to be what Levinas suggests us to be completely responsible for the Oni, where during the week you cannot, you have to be busy with things. On Shabbos you can, and during the week you have to give tzedakah, therefore you can give to the Oni. But on Shabbos, what you have to do is you have to tell the Oni, come inside, eat it inside, and then you can go out back to your home. And this is exactly the message, I think, that the Mishnah wants to teach us, that on that moment you have to be completely responsible for the Oni. By the way, it continues further, because the Nevi'im were metaken Eruv Chatzeros. And Eruv Chatzeros, the idea of Eruv Chatzeros, the issue of Eruv Chatzeros, so that is according to some, is so that you should make an Eruv Chatzeros. What is the Eruv Chatzeros? Is indeed that we all put the bread together, and we are as if we are all eating in one person's house. That all our houses are one, and we are all eating in each other's house, or we are all eating by the person which the bread is for the moment. But in any case, it's a kind of trying to make sure that we're all eating in the same place. And there is kind of an Hachanasat Orchim going. There is a third element which I also which I didn't mention, but this is what we call Mishloach Monos Ishle Re'eu, that they used to have the minhag that every Yom Tov, people used to send them each other monos. So if I can't invite you because I don't have the space and too many children, so what people used to do on Yom Tov was Mishloach Monos. They used to send parts of my food to you, and they send parts of their food to me, and therefore they used to, at least if we can't have each other, at least we should share in our meals. That was the idea in Mishloach Monos, and therefore on Purim, since they made it the Yom Tov was at least that we should have a mutter melocha, but the Mishloach Monos should still exist. Because I'm saying that because when on Hanukkah they wanted to institute the Hanukkah, they also call it the Yom Tov, and therefore it should be a Mishloach Monos Ishle Re'eu, which was not kubel by Chazal, but there is in one of the Sifrei Chitzonim, in the Sifrei Maccabim, I think, it is written that they try to institute also a completely Yom Tov with Mishloach Monos. So it seems that Mishloach Monos is a concept that exists on Yom Tov, and that Purim inherited that element of the Yom Tov, which is to share. And this is kind of again in Hachanasat Orchim, even on Yom Tov. Although that on Yom Tov you're allowed to give, there is no tzor, but there is at least the sharing of the meals that exist. May we be Take Zeuge to the Geule Shleme B'Meiro Yomeinu Omein.